Hello, here are my top 10 gardening mistakes. I'm Liz Zorab and this is Byther Farm. Even those of us who garden for a living, or maybe especially those of us that do, make mistakes on a regular basis. So I thought today I would share some of my worst or best mistakes with you and hopefully to help you avoid them in the future. So here's one. I forget to deadhead often enough or thoroughly enough. And the process of deadheading sends a message to the plant to say you haven't produced any seeds yet, you better grow some more flowers so that you can produce seeds. So it's worth us doing it because this tangly mess of seeds and dying flowers just a couple of weeks ago looked absolutely amazing. So you need to deadhead regularly. These calendula I use in salads, so I harvest the petals and mix them in salads. They're edible. I use them in the veg boxes as well as in our own kitchen. Quite often as I'm walking around the garden I see little jobs that need doing and I fool myself into believing that I'll remember to do them later on or tomorrow. So I might walk past these weeds and think, oh, I'll remember to weed that bed or to pull the worst of those out next time I go past. And I never do. I never remember to go back and do those jobs. So I have learnt, although I'm not very good at practicing it, that if I see a job, a little job that needs doing, I need to do it there and then. Hidden away in this tunnel is another mistake that I've made this year. I didn't check the seedlings, the young brassica plants, when I planted them into the netting tunnels. Didn't check to see whether they had caterpillar eggs on the leaves. So I've lovingly and carefully planted these brassica plants in this bed, covered them over with netting and very neatly trapped those caterpillar eggs on the leaves inside the tunnel. So the brassicas have been, well, nibbled away, and what I've actually done is I have created the exact problem that I was trying to avoid by using the netting. So I created this environment for the caterpillars to grow in. I've given them the food to grow on, and then I've shut them inside this tunnel so they can't escape, which has meant that they've laid the next lot of eggs in here as well. It's the exact opposite of what I wanted to do, but it's a really prime example of why it's worth checking very carefully the young brassica leaves on the plants as you plant them out. Although my aim is to grow as much food in a smaller place as possible, I do forget to give these really big plants adequate room to grow. This area is about 6 feet by 8 feet and I planted 5 courgette, zucchini plants in them, thinking that would be plenty of space for them. Well, I need to remember for next year that they actually need more space than I've given them here. So they're about 3 feet apart as best I can in this space. They could probably do with 4 or 5 feet between them to really give them room to flourish. One of the other mistakes I make is to not harvest things fast enough or soon enough. So I think we've all made the mistake with courgettes and zucchinis before to wait until they just get a bit too big. These yellow skin ones really do need to be harvested when they're quite small and the skin is quite soft. And the flesh inside is quite sweet then. This one's okay, but I can feel that the skin's getting quite tough on it. So I'll get this into the kitchen now. And these plums I looked at a few days ago and thought, yes, I need to bring a container out to pick these, and I forgot, and now an awful lot of them have gone over. It's a shame, but I guess the ducks and the wasps will be enjoying them. At the start of the year, I'm really good about labelling all the seeds that are going into trays and into small pots, and also the ones that I direct sow into the garden. A bit later in the year, as things get busier, this is my labelling. I just place a stick in the ground to show me that I've sown in a row. So I put one stick at this end and one at the far end. And I have no idea what I've sown here. So I have to wait until they grow a little to give me an idea of what I've sown. Now I can see, I can now see that these are radishes. I had wondered if they were beetroot, and I'd also wondered if they were turnips. But I can see very definitely that this is a French breakfast radish. As you may know, I like to leave potential weed seedlings to grow until they've got maybe 3 or 4 or even 5 true leaves, so that I can tell whether something growing in the ground, in the pathways, in the raised beds are in fact weeds, or whether they're seedlings of plants that I'd really like to keep. In which case I can lift them and pot them up like this. I can then pot it on and water it, or I can plant it into its permanent position. And then anything that is a weed should get lifted up. And one of the mistakes I make is not to come back and to lift those weeds at that small stage, and then they grow large and worse than that, they go to seed. So I need to get much better at lifting these weeds when they're small, and also not letting them go to seed. Because if I can get them out of the ground before they've gone to flower, I'm not putting all those weed seeds into the compost. And I'd be saving myself effort this year and for years to come. I never seem to collect quite enough rainwater. So although I have these barrels around the garden, what I really ought to do on very rainy days is transfer the water from the rain butts into these containers till they're absolutely full up, and keep them topped up, because then when we go through a dry spell like we are at the moment, there's plenty of water to add to the compost heap and to the pots of flowers that we have. And lastly, I don't make enough notes to remind myself next year of the things that I've thought about as I'm gardening this year. So quite often as I go around, I think, oh, I must make sure I do something, and then by the time I get into the house, I've forgotten what that is, and I certainly don't remember by next year. So what I usually use is my phone, and I just record into my phone as I'm going along. I just leave myself a message. So for example, in this area, there've just been a whole load of a mass of white daisies, Shasta daisies, which I absolutely loved. But as soon as I cut them back, that area looked really blank. So I want to plant something in there that will come up through those daisies and take over when they're done. So I need to make a note to myself to put something in the ground, perhaps some bulbs this year of something like Crocosmia or Monmouthshire that would come up through those daisies and then start flowering as soon as the daisies are finished. So just a quick note dictated to myself, and then I can transfer that into my gardening journal, which I do read at the beginning of the year, and I read all the notes that I've made of things that I've promised myself I will do, and then hopefully at the start of the year, while I'm full of enthusiasm and I've got the time, I'll get something planted in there and I'll get all those other jobs done that I've promised myself. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up or leave a comment, or both. And if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel. And the other thing you can do, if you want to see even more of what goes on at Byther Farm, is join us over on Patreon. I put up extra videos and do a regular live chat just for patrons. I'll leave a link above and in the description below.